points. And evidently, you'd also pick up $3, $2, and $1 per sprint. It was big money makers back then. It reminds me a lot of the Omnium on the track, which I'm sure you can relate to as well. But certainly a lot of people are talking about this giant Crit Crushers series. And the great part about it is if you have a poor race 1, you're not that far away from race 2, stepping back up in about 15 minutes' time after that one.
Well, that's it, Pat. And the leaderboard, it is very tight. After last week, we have the same rider win on both occasions. We had Pedersen win in race 1. Daryl Carter, he won in race 2. This week we start in New York. Oh, it is a tough course. 6.6 kilometres, 90 metres of elevation. There pretty much isn't a single metre of flat on that. And the second race tonight is the London Classic. That is 12 kilometres. They're going to suit quite different riders, actually. So I think that might really play into the tactics.
Oh, certainly. And that's the great thing about it is that we're going to have different people hopefully winning race 1 and race 2. But the animators, they'll still be there in race 1 and race 2. London Classic, it's one of my favourites because it's one of the original courses that we raced on in Zwift all the way back in, well, almost 2014 and 15, I think, when I first started racing on Zwift. So it's going to be an interesting one, longer course as well. But the shorter course and hilly course is going to be a great, great challenge for a lot of the riders tonight.
Well, let's take a look at the GC Cap for the men's racing from last week, if we can. There were different results that happened in race 1 and race 2. It was quite competitive. We don't have the results up yet. But, Pat, the riders, they'll get a power-up as they go through the start-finish line. How much do you think that'll play into it?
It'll play a lot into it. And tonight we've got some pretty special guests, actually, with Albie Ilquani and also Paul Vanderploeg. And they're going to be interesting to have a chat to pre- and post-races to see what the tactics will be as well.
Well, last week we heard from Alison McCormack and Lee Turner, and they showed that it's not all serious business, but there's some fun to be had too. Let's see what they're up to this week.
So excited for the Live Zwift Crit Crushers series. Last week, got to ride with over 200 women, and in France, got to travel in COVID. Can't wait for the next one. Hang on, what's that I hear?
Bang!
Woo!
Bang, bang!
Oh! See you at the next one.
You know what's bigger than the Tour de France? Crit Crushers, giant Zwift Crit Crushers. I know what to expect. I've been training. I'm ready for the next race. I've got my tactics. Take off the line at 1,000 watts. Hold for 500. And then when it comes to 200 to go, I go bang! See you later, boys and girls. The Banginator's gonna bring it home.
There's a whole lot of personality there, and let's not even start about that pink kit. But Pat, the fellas are on the line for the start of race number 1. Let's go down and see about the action.
Yes, well, certainly it's going to be hot out of the blocks, and it always is in these races, particularly just a 6.6 kilometre course. It is hilly, so it can split up, but you'll generally find it's just a constant pressure on the front of the group that's going to cause some strain on the peloton. Graham Frisley, great to see him out there tonight. Kieran Lewis, who was right up there in the racing last week. I know you covered predominantly the women's race last week, and we're going to be doing each week different. So we'll do the men's race this week, women's races again next week, and then the following week back to the men's again. But don't worry if you're watching on the stream. The highlights between the 2 races tonight of the men's with a 1 kilometre, final kilometre of the women's race as well. So we won't be missing out on the action.
Well, we have a 3.2 kilometre lead in. That's certainly not a neutral zone. You can see the riders are working pretty hard already, and their watts per kilo are, edging over 5, and that's in, what is kind of considered the warm-up. No warm-up, Pat. Once we hit around the 1.2 kilometre mark of the course, that is where it turns up very steeply. And then again, around the 3.5 to 5 kilometre mark, it does finish in a very fast downhill swoop for that last kilometre and a half. Last week, we had Nicholas Pedersen win the first race in our podium. Our GC overall sees Pedersen lead ahead of Thomason and Kieran Lewis with David Kelly also on 32 points in fourth. Pat, have we got any dark horses this week on this kind of course?
Oh, I think both courses really suit Trekkie Johnson, and funny we should speak about him. I mean, in a year that's been quite impacted by obviously coronavirus and the lockdowns we've had, he had a great start to the year, and he took out the Melbourne Warrnambool in fantastic style too. After finishing just short of Nick White 12 months earlier, he came back and got the job done, and he's a really interesting rider to watch. And funnily, he rides for the Aussie Hump Day crew, which is my favourite ride on Zwift, to be honest, on a Wednesday evening, and gets over that hump day in the middle of the week. And we're looking at Trekkie now. He's pushing 360, nearly 400 watts. Heart rate's already up at 180, which shows that it's already been quite intense. But I think he's the one to watch tonight. He's highly motivated, looks really fit, and certainly look forward to seeing how he plays out in this first race. But Kieran Lewis, who we're also looking at from Zwift HQ, he's been really good. You mentioned he's top 3 on the general classification. And in this type of event, as you'd know, Kate, better than most, it is the rider that is most consistent that is going to take out the biscuits at the end of the series.
Well, and interesting, our movers from last week, Pat, they're actually hiding in the bunch, which is a very smart thing to do because on Zwift, the drafting effect is just as real as it is out on the road. Well, Kieran Lewis, I mean, I think that he could really be one to watch, and the fact that we haven't seen him pop his head out the front yet, I think is very encouraging. We've got some new names this week, and interestingly, we've got a really interesting mix of geographies represented out there today, from Wales to Turkey to Brits to Aussies, currently riding in that top 10.
Yeah, it's always good to see a great turnout on all of the racing series in the Australian winter. We see a lot of riders from across the globe, and they know that they're going to get a hard race, and I think they've got a lot of respect for the Australian Zwifters. It's good to see a fairly strong field tonight, 93 in the A-grade category. It's Dylan Lindsay out there as well for Subaru Giant Racing. There's also some other riders there like Damien Bovolino. I'd be interested to see whether he can slide himself into the top 20 in this stage. But you were speaking about riders to watch. Graham, he was really our highlight during the National Road Series E-Series, should I say, earlier in the winter, and he was getting over some decent hills. This race tonight could be just what he needs, hard enough to break up the field, but not so hard that he's left behind, and he certainly is a fast sprinter.
Well, we're seeing some accelerations toward the front here. It is quite a blob so far. It's not so strung out. And if we look top right of screen, we can see that they are going slightly downhill, but like we said earlier, not a single metre of flat. There's quite a few teams represented out there. Pat, how important is that in the Zwift world?
Well, it's important in a series just because you have the ability that if you have a couple of riders up on general classification with some good points, maybe there's going to be a course where you could attack with a rider while the other teammate can sit in the pack. But ultimately in this style of racing, it's just as hard whether you're in a team or not. You've either got the legs or unfortunately you do not. And I don't think it's going to be a big one to mix up tonight because this group's still quite large. Fastest riders in this group at the moment, definitely Graham Frisley by a horse's cart and a half at the moment. But there's some quick riders in there that could challenge him. I think he's the one to watch.
A horse's cart and a half. I like that. They're inside the final 2 kilometres now. It is a bigger bunch than we expected it to be. As they run into the finish, Pat, it is slightly on the downhill. So I think we can expect a bit of action leading into that final kilometre to jostle and position before that run-in starts. They are travelling already at 45 kilometres an hour, but I think that will edge up higher and higher as we get toward that finish.
Yeah, they come off the false flat now. They start to go downhill, false flat now. And this is where positioning will be crucial. Exactly the same as in real life racing. If you're too far back, when the surge comes, Katie, you're not going to be able to follow the acceleration. Trekkie Johnson's right up there. Bovolino, who I mentioned earlier, right there as well. Vaughan Bowman, he's in the mix as well. Nathan Elliott looks like he's there. Dylan Lindsay right up there. Surge already. This is an early one from Nathan Elliott. And Graham Frisley, he's not messing about, not taking any risks. He wants to follow this move.
Well, Graham Frizzley certainly has the legs and can't afford even a small gap to open up, because just as in real life, a small gap on Zwift, it'll definitely burn the legs. It is interesting in this point in the race, we are coming down soon to hit that 500 metre to go mark. And Shorey, the sprinters are positioning and they've opened up the sprint.
Well, Graham Frizzley's gone super long. I think maybe too long, but I can't tell him what to do because he is a winner. He's flying to the line. He's going to get the job done, is he? Yes, he is. And it looks like Anya Racing. Offerdale was right up there too. He's a strong rider, the overseas rider. He'll be back for race 2, and we'll get the results up soon. It actually seemed that they left it a little late. I think they thought it was a bit longer there, Kate.
Yeah, it can be a little bit deceptive, I think, sometimes. They're looking so much at the positioning, but an incredible show of acceleration from Graham Frizzley. We picked him from the outset. Pat, you picked it. He was the one to watch, and he certainly delivered.
Well, he was never really in doubt. Unfortunately, there's just his acceleration and watts per kilo, particularly in his sprint, is just so much higher than the rest. And he got the aero power up as well. And there were a few that were able to execute that. I saw Nathan Elliott. Look, he was stuck with a poor power up for this course, but he went long, tried something. And the back-to-back Melbourne to Warrnambool winner, he tried everything he could, but I think he's just slipped outside the top 10.
Well, we've got Paul van der Ploeg and Alan Yaquani. They're hooked up onto the live stream video. I think it's quite fun to be able to watch them suffer in their living rooms. And we'll throw to Paul and we'll take a look. And Pat, let's find out how that first race was for him.
Well, Paulie, how was that one?
That was so brutal. I was dressed for the pre-race show, going with a bit of fashion over function, and then I just got thrown straight into race 1. The hat was a terrible choice.
It's a bit hot in there, is it, Paul? Tell us, Graham Frizzley, he took that one out easy, but the pressure was on from the start, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was waiting for the live video cross, and then I missed the start, and then I was just on the chase the whole time. So looks like I was well out the back, but saw a couple of other professional giant riders, Tim Van Berkel, Benny Allen. So bit of fun and super furious racing.
Well, for mine, mate, it's race 2 that suits you. The London Classic, you have got it written all over you. We'd love to see you pushing up towards the front. What are the chances?
Look, let's be honest, the pandemic has not treated my fitness kindly, but I guess we'll see what we can do on a flatter course. The hills, you could feel them kicking in. I saw the red percentage gauge in the corner saying it kicked up over 10%. And I was like, oh, you can feel that. You can feel that.
Yeah, hey, mate, can you take your hat off for us? Sorry, Pat, I just need to see this pandemic hair playing out for us. That might be the reason you've got that lid on, hey?
Well, the hat is to disguise the bad hairdo. There's no hairdressers at the moment. My girlfriend's tried to cut it a little bit, but it's obviously just going wild.
Well, Paul, you've always been one to be a little bit on the wild side. And good luck race 2. Kate, I reckon race 2 does suit him a lot better. And certainly Alan is up for a good race as well in race 2. It's so much about using your energy correctly on the London course, because there's moments of exposure. There's flats, there's the little climb, but then for the run to the finish line, timing of the aero power up will be absolutely crucial, and particularly in the quick turnaround.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things to consider as well, because like Paul said, there isn't a single second where you can not pay attention and actually stay up. So the riders have a decision to make in between the races, whether they ride fairly quickly to keep that heart rate up, or whether they take a bit of a breather on the floor. Pat, you've had a lot of experience racing, and you've raced against some of these guys. Do you think that these courses might yield a similar result? I mean, on paper, it looked like New York was going to be a lot hillier and a lot harder, but we finished in quite a large bunch.
Well, particularly that short style of racing, it's going to be hard to get rid of an endurance pursuit-based athlete like Graham Frisley. His track background gives him that ability to hold a high tempo for that 10 minutes. That's not a problem for him, and that race just came in under that 10 minutes. So I think London Classic, he's the favourite again if he lines up. He might be, I don't know where he's at with his training program at the moment, because, of course, Graham's vision is to make the Olympics eventually, and he's well on the way. He's an incredible athlete, and we're actually very lucky to have a rider of his calibre coming and racing so often on Zwift. But it's shown that for these riders during particularly COVID lockdown, Zwift has given them an alternative where their career isn't put on pause. They're still developing at the moment. And I think that's really the crucial aspect that's played more for our professional or our athletes that are looking to become professionals. But at the same time, in something like the Giant Crit Crushers, we've got everyday Joe Blows. The Weekend Warriors jump on, and look, they're the major percentage of riders that are on Zwift, but they love measuring themselves up against the Graham Frisleys of the world.
Yes, well, it's us punters, I think, who have really flocked to Zwift during 2020, which has been such a strange year. We'll get some results from that first race and take a look at what happened. Of course, the women are out there racing as well tonight. And let's have a chat to Albie, Pat. Let's find out how he found race 1 through New York.
Albie, how did it go? Race 1, how are you feeling?
Well, I had a few tech problems. I kind of missed the start a little bit, so I ended up having an easier race than the last week. But so I'm feeling a bit better for this one coming up. So I was a bit disappointed to not sort of be in that group with those guys. But as you're saying, those guys push damn hard. And COVID's been pretty damn tough too. But no excuses. I just haven't been riding, and but you know that's the way it is.
What about race 2, London Classic? Do you reckon we can get you in the front group, or maybe a little bit of an attack off the front?
I'll do it. If I can get to the front, I'll do anything to get a name shout. Surely, but yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Good man, all the best, and we'll be catching that live action in a moment. So we'll look at the results now, Caden. Well, they come through thick and fast, and just like the racing does, just 6.8 kilometres was that race for race 1. Remember, race 2 coming up, Graham Frisley, in 8 minutes and 4 seconds. That's 6.8 kilometres. That's so fast. Christo Ball, he's been really good. He's second. Matt Robertson finished in third. Offerdale, we said how strong he is, and he was there in fourth. Jason Thompson in fifth. Jaron Walker in sixth. Kieran Lewis has got some crucial points in seventh. Psychopath from Great Britain in eighth. Brendan Johnston, Trekkie, right up there. And Dylan Lindsay, one of the country boys from Victoria, he's rounds out the top 10. So good race there for the Subaru Giant Racing team as well, with 3 riders in the top 10. In B grade, Nick Owen, he takes it out. He's been going really strong too, actually, across the series recently. Ian Maynick in second. Michael Templeton in third. Nick McClellan, he was in fourth with Damien Hassan. Watch him. He can be quick on the line in fifth. Verituno in sixth. Paddy Quiggin in seventh. Chris Harris in eighth with an extra S on the end, I think. And Hollywood, well, he got up there for ninth. And Craig Skinner, he rounds out the top 10 in B grade. 8 minutes 33. That's a quick time too. For the C graders, Dale Lingwood, he took out the win from Nathan Wilson and Andrew Bain. Chris Bremer in fourth with Stephen Nowicki in fifth. Jeffrey Schultz just in front of JCat. Jason Dennis from B&J Racing in eighth. Richard Harding in ninth. And Jason Pushy in 8 minutes 59 rounds out the top 10. D-grade rounds out our first race for the man. Gareth Seed took out the win. Oliver Lanús, keep giving him super shout-outs because he's such a fantastic young lad in under-12 category. Taichi Ando in third. Aquaman Marty in fourth. Tom Wenborn in fifth. Katsu Yam, he finished in sixth with Paul Dollard, Owie Feliciano, Mark Saunders, and Dave Staley. Shout-out to Dave from Giant Bikes Australia. Well, Kate, that was fast racing in the first race, and all the riders completed the course from A to D grade between 8 and 9 minutes 10. That's really fast racing.
It certainly is very zippy. And if we look back at the results from last week, put them together with race one this week, it's Jason Thomason and Kieran Lewis who are head-to-head at the top of the table there. So they'll probably be calculating some points and watching each other fairly eagle-eyed in this next lap around the London Classique. It's 12 kilometres, a bit longer, but also a bit flatter. So we expect that speed to be really high again. So over in the women's, last week, Reznikov, my goodness me, she absolutely sprinted well away. Frankie Sewell, we can see now, gee, she's riding so well. And she was in third last week. She's riding for the Rock Salt Attacker team. And they worked very well together as a team. They actually finished in third, fourth and fifth in that first race with Courtney Sherwell and Justine Barrow coming in fourth and fifth. So Frankie Sewell, 50 kilometres an hour coming into the finish. She is rocketing away. She's got a super impressive power to weight. The young featherweight track rider who's just moved up from the junior categories, but it looks like the competition, Fran Bambust, is overtaken her on the line to take the win. She was second last week. The Belgian rider, she has a lot of horsepower, and I'm not surprised to see her do so well in a sprint. Justine Barrow, top 5 last week, and she looks to come over in second place there. So a very fast sprint once again for the women, over 60 kilometres an hour into that sprint, and some fairly consistent names from last week. They will be calculating the points. Again, it is an Omnium system, so 20 for the win and down. So let's look at the results. In A grade, Fran Bambust was our winner, Justine Barrow in second, Neve Bradbury in third, Cassia Boglio in fourth, Sophie Sutton in fifth, that's a famous cycling name, Courtney Sherwell in sixth, Susie Wood in seventh. We've got Imee Nichols in 8th, Jenny Pettinen in 9th, and Kim Garland in 10th. Some familiar names there, Pat. In B grade, we had Sarah Grove take the win. Great ride. Erin Bertram in 2nd, Selena Shake in 3rd, Amanda Megason in 4th. Hannah Vine took out 5th place. Grace Fang took out 6th. In 7th was Josie Simpson. In 8th was V. O'Connell. In 9th was Sharon Blegg. And in 10th was Afe Reid. And over to the C grade women, they are clipping along under 10 minutes for that nearly 7 kilometre circuit. Tam Kite was the winner there. Emma Gribben in 2nd, Simone M in 3rd. Mazza Lovegrove came in 4th. Erin Ferg, she came in 5th. Anna Johnson in 6th. Lam Kong in 7th. Kat C in 8th. Leanne Versteeg in 9th. And Priscilla Brown in 10th. And we haven't seen the D category finish just yet, but they are still racing and sweating out. Of course, we've got 8 different categories across the men and the women. We've got from A through to D. And Pat, there's some really familiar names, not only for me and the women from the elite ranks, but it's also really great to see some of the names in the B, C and D that often turn up to the community rides. And I've personally seen them rise through the ranks. A lot of them have never actually raced out on the road, but have really used Zwift this year to develop and get interested in racing, and it's so good to see, and great to see them getting some results.
Well, I found that very common, actually, is that there's riders that don't want to race outdoors, but they still want to race. They want that the blood to boil, that white line fever, but they don't want to race outside. They don't want to worry about maybe clipping a wheel or having a fall. So Zwift's really given them that opportunity, and particularly people that have picked up the bike later in life. They do it for more recreation than racing, but they just want to see where they're at, and it's fantastic they can do that. Great to see Neve Bradley up there in the top 3. Francesca Sewell, you touched on as well. Both ride for the Rock Salt Attacker squad, presented by Liv and SRAM, and they're my favourite domestic Australian team, I have to say. I've got a soft spot for them. I really love that Peter Mullins leads the way as a captain of that team and a leader, and I think that they're really the best place for our young women to be to really develop through the system and potentially go into the professional level. So fantastic to see their representation not only in the series, but also great to see the young athletes getting up towards the front.
Spot on, Pat. Now let's take a look at some of how the riders prepared for this evening's race.
Hey guys, Chucky and Maeve just getting some last minute training for the Giant Crit Crusher series on Zwift. Tomorrow night is the second round, 2 races. Week 1 was tough. I think 11th and 4th in 2 races, but super short, super intense racing. See you there tomorrow night.
So week 1 of the Crit Crushers series on Zwift presented by Giant was an absolute disaster for me. So I thought I'm going to mix up the training. Because of lockdown, there's no crit, but I'm using the apartment and I'm going to hook some corners and do some sprints.
I'm coming for you, Trekkie.
I now feel completely ready for the Crit Crushers series. I'll see you there. It's going to be awesome fun. Wish me luck.
Hey guys, Tim Van Berkel here. Excited to be part of the Giant Crit Crushers series on Zwift. Spewing I missed week 1, but ready to throw down in week 2. You!
Hey all. Well, last week's week 1 of the Giant Crit Crusher series showed me I need to up my game and put a bit more effort in. Gotta say, love these short, hard intervals on Zwift just to really improve the training. There's nothing better than a crit with masses of other people. Just really gets you into it. Back to it. I need to do a bit more if I'm going to beat Hollywood next week. Catch you Wednesday, 6 o'clock. Bacon out.
Crit Crusher, week 2. Got smashed in week 1. I'm ready. Been training. Top 500 for sure. Right on, everybody.
Oh, well, Pat, you know
There's
what
some
I
really
got the
good
most
touches.
out of that is that we've got triathletes, we've got mountain bikers, we've got pretty much newbies to racing. This is open to everybody, and everybody's getting something different out of it. I think it's just fantastic. Now, Paul Vanderploeg, he was a mountain biker, he was a world champion in the Eliminator, and he told us before that his race weight was 98 kilos. Hope you don't mind me mentioning that, Paul. I'm sure he's not shy about that. That's a pretty heavy physique compared to some of these other riders. It kind of suits this London Classique because it's flat, it's fast, and riders like that generate, well, a whole lot of power.
He certainly will generate a lot of power, particularly in the flatter parts of the course, but the rise up to the square will really put him in a bit of the hurt locker, I think. And look, we'll enjoy seeing that because no love lost between the lot of us and Paul. He's really good about it. He loves a good laugh. And we'll head down there and see them in the pens. They're about to get started. This is a really tough start in this particular course. There's no letdown because on the flat parts, Kate, it's so fast, and then on the hilly parts of the course, which are short but steep, it is so high. You're going to see what's in the high 700-800s probably consistently up to the square, and then they'll have about 2 kilometers to go until the flat sprint. And this is, like I said, one of the originals of the courses in which would be raced in a lot of the racing in the early days, as we see Tim Van Berkel right up there at the front. And so I've got a bit of a soft spot for this course.
Well, a lot of the athletes and a lot of the viewers would have done, well, a whole lot of laps around London. I know I certainly have. It is kind of, can we call it a retro course maybe? But a lot of these riders would be very familiar with this course. We can see that compared to early on in the New York race, the bunch is rather large. And there's Albie. Pat, he's going good on wanting to be named on the screen. He is known for his early breaks. He's got the pain face on. Maybe no words, but a thumbs up. That's a win from Albie.
Well, he's known as the People's Champ, and we might find out a little bit more about that post-race. We're going to go to him and talk to him post-race, so it's great to see him really put himself in the hurt to get up there. As we see, he's hiding his heart rate on us, so we don't know just how hard he's pushing. But Graham Frisley right up there again. Dylan Lindsay, his teammate, up there as well. Kieran Lewis right up the front. All the main riders. Meneses up there as well. Now, Meneses was really strong in a time trial series that we did recently on Zwift, and I think that he might be able to do something tonight. So he was in the win series recently. But this Giant Crit Crushers series, it offers something different because you might have done well in race 1, but you might not be a rider that really backs up well straight after. And that is a really big challenge. And there are some athletes that really struggle with that.
Oh, and Tim van Berkel, the triathlete we saw on our little earlier video, he's in the mix there as well. And Pat, interestingly, Graham Frisley didn't race last week. So when we're talking about the overall GC, it's definitely Jason Thomason and Kieran Lewis that are on the top of that table. How do you think that will affect their tactics in this race? Because the two of them are head-to-head on the overall.
Yeah, I don't think there's much they can do about it on this course. But I tell you, if this man, Paul Vanderploeg, gets to the finish, he is a rider that could challenge Graham Frisley. Mind you, Graham has probably a little bit longer sprint than Paul at the moment. Certainly in phenomenal condition is Graham Frisley at the moment. David Williams, we see him in there as well. I saw Wes Sulzberger pop up as well from HQ, Zwift HQ in Australia. So great to see Wes in there also. But Paul Vanderploeg, I tell you, I love that little video that he did. And Trekkie, I'm coming for you. There's no love lost between those two, both from the mountain bike fraternity, but both have laid their hand on the road, given it a little bit of a test. And I tell you, Trekkie Johnson, he's a really phenomenal rider, not only on the mountain bike, but also on the road.
Well, and we saw him with his gorgeous daughter, Maeve, sitting on the trainer. That's a sight I think any parents around the world have encountered when the kids come in and are fascinated by what's going on this funny bike and Zwift contraption. Pat, they're going already about 50 kilometres an hour, nudging up towards it. It is 12 kilometres in total this race, so they're only in the first quarter, but they're certainly not backing off. They're edging towards 60 kilometres now along the flat.
Yeah, look, certainly this is a quick course, regardless of a little bit of a rise that they will see shortly. It's going to still be up around that 50 kilometres an hour for most of the race. We see Jay Felke in there as well for Aero Racing. Nathan Elliott, well, he put in a long attack, unfortunately had the wrong power up. He fell a little bit short in race one tonight, but I certainly think that he has the opportunity to go long again in this stage here for race two this evening. Different course, different length, but same amount of pain.
Well, there's a few beautiful pieces of scenery they can see out on course. I'm not sure they'll be paying too much attention to it, to be honest, but we certainly can. We'll go past the Palace and you see all the sights of London. Wes Sulzberger, we saw him pop up as well. Of course, he's ridden the Tour de France, so this is a bit of a different challenge for him. Pat, we talked about power-ups. They get those as they go through that start line. Some are more useful than others. A featherweight is probably not too useful here unless you use it when you are accelerating in that final sprint to gain a little bit of an advantage. We can see that we've got the draft bus being used. That is a very big advantage. If you were out there, Pat, which power-up would you be choosing if you could?
Well, I think they'll all be choosing the Aero Power Up, and if you had one at the start, you certainly wouldn't be using it. But we can see Trekkie using the draft Power Up, and he's just getting rid of that. There's no real use for that for him on this course. They're not that far away from taking their hairpin turn. They've just done the first little rise that's part of this course. Didn't really break up too much, but we can see it is single file. It's Kieran Lewis staying very close to Trekkie. He needs those points on the overall. Oftedal is right up there as well for Callis Racing. And also up there as well, I did see Christo Ball. He finished second in race one tonight, so picked up some really strong points. I know you spoke about the overall leaders of the race, but if Graham Frisley can pick up the maximum points again in race two tonight, he certainly pushes himself right up towards the top of the leaderboard.
Well, we've got a bit of a break for here, Pat. It's very interesting. We do have Trekkie Johnson in there as well as Kieran Lewis. It is a break that could stay away. And look at those gaps opening up. That it is absolutely an elastic band, and people's legs are certainly starting to suffer. It is a tough course to keep a breakaway away, though. They are edging toward that 60 kilometre an hour mark again, and certainly the bunch will be able to get a lot of speed in those numbers.
Yeah, it's come through this time. They'll pick up a new power up each and get ready for the second rotation of the course. And of course, this is going to be a difficult sprint finish to time correctly. The rider that gets it right, and Graham Frisley's got a lot of racing experience. I know I keep bringing him up, but he certainly has a lot of racing experience on Zwift, and timing is crucial. It's so crucial. We can see, look at the words. They're having a little chat in that front group. They think this is a chance. They've got 3 seconds. So it's a decent little gap, but you can see when you see it visually, it's not that much, is it?
No, it's not that much. I mean, they can't afford to back off the power at all. And certainly Graham Frisley, we know he's on excellent form. And realistically, when the time comes, if he needs to jump across and bridge that gap, he will be able to do that. The key for them all is to make sure that gap doesn't open up any more than that 1, 2, or 3 second mark. And then it's certainly recoverable in those closing kilometres.
Oh, yeah, certainly. You'd want to be opening up a gap around 15, 20 seconds on the backside of this course to stay away, because in the sprint finish, a rider like Frisley could really draw back 5 or 10 seconds just in the final 300 metres. I think it was a really smart move from Graham and also from Subaru Giant to get him on board this year, where he could concentrate on his track racing but also evolve as a road rider. And Matt Keenan and I have definitely focused on him this winter on the Zwift series. Across the board, the National Road Series, which we had, the SRAM Send It Series as well. He was just so strong, and he had a little break there because of his plans for his track program, but he looks like he's back in fine form. He's going to be difficult to beat in race 2.
So the bunch is much bigger than it was in New York, but it certainly has whittled down from the start. But we can see it's kind of blobbing and spreading out across the road. We've still got that small bunch a few seconds just up ahead, but that looks to be closed down, even though there wasn't a concerted effort from the bunch necessarily. Just goes to show that they've taken the pedal off the foot off the gas pedal. Getting all confused there. 42 kilometres an hour compared to the nearly 60 they were going before. This is past the halfway mark, and Pat, I think this is the moment where they're all taking a very big breath of air and deciding how much they have left in the tank.
Well, yeah, I think the big thing on this type of course, Kate, is even if you're not on the front, you're still really chomping at the bit, because you got the bit right between the teeth, because it's so tough. We saw, even though there wasn't really an organised chase to bring that group back that was at 3 seconds, the wattage in the top left-hand turn were really, really high. And we're going to have a quick look at Paul Vanderploeg. Let's see him. Oh, yes, he looks all right. I don't think I minded. Paul, he's looking okay. He's trying to speak to us, but we haven't got volume on him at the moment. But he looks good, Paul. I like the look of him. That's the type of.
Yeah.
I tell you what, when I was racing him, Kate, if I saw him looking like that, I'd tell the boys to go a bit harder on the next climb. I never wanted to sprint against Paul Vanderploeg, that's for sure. But he looks pretty good, and he is one rider that has the power, the pure power, that could take all the way to the line Graham Frisley. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go. He's off the back anyway. That's why he's smiling. He's having a good time back there in 69th position. Well, in the front group, though, it's Graham Frisley's not going to be worried about him now. But certainly in there could be a long-range attack from maybe Dylan Lindsay or also Kieran Lewis. Kieran Lewis needs those points.
Well, they had a belting start. I mean, they were pushing over the 50 to 60 kilometre mark early on. They have taken a little bit of a breather. We even saw them get down into the low kind of 30 kilometres an hour. And Pat, that's almost freewheeling for most of these fellas. But Paul, well, I think that early burn certainly got rid of him. And it is funny, isn't it, when you see his smiling face? He's like the smiling assassin, but he actually isn't in that front group. So Graham Frisley can breathe a sigh of relief. It is a bit more difficult for them on Zwift, Pat, for them to see who's in the bunch. I mean, normally when you're out on the road, you can look around and you're a bit more aware of who the movers are, but it is a bit different. You almost get less opportunity to take anything for granted, and you have to assume, Graham Frisley almost has to assume he's going to the line with Paul sitting right on his wheel.
Yeah, certainly a lot of the riders, and shout out to them all because they're racing so strongly, do tune into the live stream. So they know what information we give them, Kate. But also, when I was racing on Zwift more often, I used to use the Zwift Companion app, and I would sort of scroll through who was in those sort of next 10 and behind me positions, because you did really want to know who was where. And much like in real life racing, you wanted to try and work out what are their their tactics before they unfold as we take these final turns. We're not too far away, 2.5 kilometres from the finish. Nathan Elliott right up there again. Trekkie Johnson, Kieran Lewis, all the same suspects we've been speaking about. Graham Frisley right thereabouts. Stephen Richards in there as well. And Jeffrey Creel up there, one of the older statesmen of the Zwift racing scene. He's been strong for many years, and he has been known to pull off a little bit of a perler occasionally. So maybe Jeffrey Creel could be one to watch.
Well, they're coming into the final kilometres, and certainly the riders, this is the point where they can't any longer afford to be scrolling through that companion app, Pat, because this is it. Is it absolutely the business end of the race? They're about to go through that fabulous 1 kilometre to go banner. It is absolutely business time. Graham Frisley is positioning himself well. I think we might see a repeat here, Pat. He looks to be on great form.
Yeah, well, Christo Ball, who was second in race 2, he's right up there as well. So we can't ride him off, and nor can we ride off Nathan Elliott. He's shown he can do a long-range attack before. Mitch McGovern, he was right up there in the finish in race 1. So too Dylan Lindsay. But it's going to be an interesting race down the line. All eyes on Frisley. Ours as well. He sits in 15th, now 18th position. He's going to look to get the draft right off the back of these riders, and this sprint, it looks short, but it's still 600 metres or more to the line from here as we see Graham Frisley. Watch his numbers in the top left because he is a phenomenal athlete. We get that new camera angle right on the front. It's Wong. Miz right behind him. Kieran Lewis from Zwift HQ going for some big points. Graham Frisley now opens up the accelerator. And I tell you, powerhouse, 1200 watts. Thank you very much. He's got the aero power up. Christo Ball coming for a fast finish again. And Thompson right there as well. Thomason will come over the top. He'll finish in second. Christo Ball in third with Hoffman. And then also Jeffrey Creel. One of my dark horses. He finished in the top 5 there. Big shout out to Creel. But it is Grizzly Frisley who takes out race 2. That's back-to-back wins for the Giant Racing cyclist who rides for the Subaru Giant Racing team in the National Road Series. So quite fitting that he takes out the Giant Crit Crushers race 1 and race 2 in week 2. We'll have a look at a replay now, Kate, and this is where he made his move. His acceleration, 1,450 watts was his 1 second power best numbers there, and that's where the gap was opened up so viciously. Can't take anything away from Thomason, though, and also Christo Ball, because they threw down a very, very competitive sprint. No harm in losing by 10 lengths to Graham Frisley. Let me have you know that. And then in the top 10, Nathan Elliott. What a strong sprint by him. Kieran Lewis picks up some really good points in 8th or 9th. And Ofterdale right up there in 7th as well. So some familiar faces, but it's Graham Frisley, the Grizzly Frisley, that reigns supreme on week 2 to take out first and second races.
He's on excellent form. He wasn't here last week, but this week he's taken 2 from 2. But Pat, Jason Thomason, he is seriously impressive, incredibly consistent. He will end the week on the top of the overall leaderboard. He came in second in that race. That's a couple of podiums across this 4 races thus far. It'll be interesting in the next couple of weeks if Frisley and Thomason are beating it out for that overall GC.
Well, the good thing about it is it's the most consistent rider, Kate. And if you turn up for all the races, you don't have to be as consistent as those that don't. But a big hats off to him. That was a really strong sprint. He could have given up when he was side by side with Christo Ball, who finished second in race 1, should I say. So he's got good form as well. He could have easily given up, but Thomason, he kept fighting to the line, got those extra points, and it's good to see riders that fight all the way to the line. It's sort of that characteristic we look for in particularly performance athletes, because it's so easy to let the reins go when the going gets tough. But he grabbed them, he held them firm, and second place in race 2. He's going to go up to the top of the leaderboard in the general classification. But Kieran Lewis, he was right there getting some good points as well.
Well, and there were some brilliant uses of the power-ups, of course. Frisley in that final sprint used that aero power-up just to increase that acceleration. Brilliantly done. Let's go and have a chat to Albie, and then we'll have a chat to Paul, and we'll see how it played out from their perspectives.
That'll be good on you for getting up there and having an attack early. Well, getting up the front. I saw you hid your heart rate. Now, was that for a personal reason, or you just didn't want us to know?
I've got it on. It's just not working. I have to change batteries, so I'm having a few problems. But you said it before, Shory, a few sentences ago. Performance. I don't have any. It's nowhere to be found. That was quite hard. So
it is tough, though, isn't it? Because you're wanting to be involved, so you put yourself in the position. And in real life racing, you just get in the wheels and you'd hang tough. But on Zwift, it's no hanging tough because when it says close the gap, it just doesn't happen.
yeah, exactly. But that's the way Zwift is, and that's why everyone sort of loves it. It's just you can start sprinting a long way out. But looking at those guys and hearing your coverage, it's just some big numbers being pushed by those guys. It's awesome to watch.
Yeah, well, Graham Frisley, one of the up-and-coming riders, and I'm sure that you've got an eye on him as well. You follow the racing very closely. Tell us, you're known as the People's Champion. Where did that term come from in regards?
Look, I didn't term it myself, obviously. I think it just came about racing cyclocross and just being an older guy around town, I think. And, it's just I think the curve guys came up with it, really, the guys that run curve, and it just stuck. So I'm happy to go with it, but definitely it wasn't named by me anyway.
No, for sure. Anyone that knows Albie know you are not one to fill your own pockets with gold, but you are a phenomenal guy to watch. Thanks for letting us tune in and see you, well, at times grovelling, but also having a great time, and I hope you enjoyed week 2 of the Giant Crit Crushers series.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Shory. See you next week.
Well,
Legend.
Yeah, Paul. Oh, Paul's got the locks going all beautiful for you, Kate.
Oh, look, you're
Little less
looking
the
good,
jersey.
Paul. Where's the cap? And, mate, we were a bit concerned that, we were a bit concerned. You looked like you were doing it a lot easier, and we thought that maybe Graham Frisley had something to worry about. And then we found out that you just slipped off the back.
Yeah, I was doing it pretty easy because I got dropped about 5k in when it picked up. I just needed a small climb and I was out the back door.
Did your training around your apartment block help at all tonight, Paul? Because I think you're going to have to try something different again for next week.
Yeah, I reckon back to the drawing board for the training. I might actually do some real riding. We've now got 2 hours of exercise allowed, which is actually probably too much for these type of races. We've only got 10 or 15 minutes per race, so I don't want to overtrain, but I probably need to lift up my game a little bit.
Yeah, well, world champion in the eliminator. It's not the long distance that's important. It's less is best, and best is best. World champion eliminator in the mountain bike. Thanks for joining us, Paul, Giant ambassador, and certainly that Ride High Country. Go and check it out. I know you're an ambassador for that as well. We'll see you next week. Well, we won't. We're covering the women's next week. I'm certain you'll join us the following week. Thanks for letting us inside your pain cave.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute delight. It's so good having these races on every week to break up the week while we're still in lockdown. I haven't raced in a long time, so as my results show, I'm a bit rusty, but this is good for getting me back into it.
Kate, I really love this ability to go inside their houses with them, and we did a lot with Jay Vine and Bree Vine during the National Road Series. We saw the White brothers, Nick and Liam, during that series as well. And to be able to go in and see Trekkie Johnson, to see Albie Okwani, to see Paul Vanderplug in action and struggling, I think it lets people at home realise that it's not just them struggling, everyone is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really unique part of esports, isn't it, Pat, that a lot of the time you're simply watching players with headphones on playing away, but Zwift is incredibly unique that we actually get to watch them suffering a little bit and sweating it out and certainly working very hard. Let's take a look at the men's results, Pat, and certainly a very strong ride by Graham Frisley to win 2 out of 2.
Yeah, and certainly stick around because we'll have the last kilometre of the women's race coming up for race 2 as well. Looking forward to seeing who took that out. Graham Frisley, obviously, he took out the win. But Thomason and Christo Ball, my rides of the day, that was a great little fight out there for second and third. Lucas Hoffman in fourth. My man Jeffrey Creel, he rounded out the top 5. Big shout out to him. Jaron Walker in sixth. Off Dole, he was very strong tonight. Top 10 in both races. So too was Nathan Elliott and Kieran Lewis. And Mitch McGovern, well, he rounded out the top 10, and well, the young man from BMW, he'll be looking forward to next week's racing as well. In B grade, Paddy Quiggin, he got the better of Michael Templeton in race 2. Patrick O'Keefe in third. Craig Skinner in fourth. Nick Owen, the winner of race 1, he still finished top 5. Great effort by him. Sue Toshiaki right up there in sixth again. Chris Harris again in seventh. Hollywood went one better, and so too did Ian Manick. So similar names all around. Damien Hassan, he rounded out the top 10. And in C grade, we're just waiting for that to populate, still out there. So we'll just wait for that to come through. But we'll go and have a look at the women's replay while we wait for those results to come through, Kate. And the final kilometre of the women's race, Peter Mullins right up there, Kate.
Well, we can expect a sprint, and it's quite a small bunch coming into this finish here. Frankie Sewell, she had a ripping ride in the last race and also last week, but it was Fran Bambuster who was just powered over the top in the sprint. We can see her right up the front there, and she is ready to go. So let's see who makes the first move. They can't leave it too late. It's not too long of a run-in, and the acceleration has begun, and that is from Courtney Sherwell from Rock Salt Attacker, and she certainly opened up a gap, but it's still 1 kilometre left to go. She's done that late attack, Pat, which often works. It certainly burns the legs of the other riders.
Yes, well, you can get away with it on this course sometimes, but you need to open up about a 4 or 5 second gap, and it doesn't seem like the power is really that consistent there. Boglio, she comes over the top with Clark just behind her. Justine Barrow, who was here second in race 1, she's up there as well, and not really noted for her sprinting, but she's done well on these flatter courses. Francesca Sewell right there too, with as they take that turn, get onto the other colour road, and this is it, 400 metres to go.
Well, Frankie Sewell, Fran Bambost, she is certainly, they are the sprinters to watch. One a young trackie and the other a little bit more seasoned sprinter out on the road. Justine Barrow there, she has certainly done incredibly well over the winter in the Zwift series. And the acceleration, it's opened up, and as they sprint towards the finish, this is a tight one, Pat. There is no one rider dominating. It's going to go all the way to the line. Frankie Sewell, Fran Bambost is in there, Nev Bradley.
I reckon it was Corset. Looks like Steph Corset. That's a big ride by the Townsville ride. Up in Townsville that's Ruth's daughter, I believe, Kate Bates. And
it is. And Steph Corset has one of the highest powder weights in the bunch, and she just came over the top at the finish there of Frankie Sewell. That was an incredibly good ride. In fact, Pat, last week we thought that Steph Corset was absolutely the rider to watch because she just puts out incredible numbers on Zwift, and we knew that she had it in her. She can certainly accelerate with really an incredible burst of speed and an incredible 15-second power. And it looked like that sprint really suited her. The first sprint, Bambush just muscled her way over the top, but maybe she was carrying a bit of fatigue into that one because we didn't see her feature as we thought it may have. But that's this format, right? There's only 7 to 10 minutes between the racing. That's not a lot of time to recover.
Also, timing crucial, particularly in shorter races and particularly on fast finishes. You get the draft off the other riders, and certainly good to see Sophie Sutton up there as well. She's really impressed me on the track over the past 2 seasons. But Corset really came to my mind when 2 years ago at the National Championships in Ballarat, and we hadn't heard much of her. She'd made the trek down from northern Queensland, and she stormed onto the scene. I think she took a bronze medal in the criterium and then went on to do well on the road races as well. So great to see the younger riders doing well. And I've mentioned this throughout the other races that we've done in winter. It's just to see these younger riders get the exposure against the more experienced riders. That's also beneficial for them as the results are coming through for A-grade women's.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, Pat. It's awesome experience for these riders. So let's take a look at the results. Oh, and it looks like Frankie Sewell actually took the win there. But by gosh, it's close, isn't it? Look, 0.11 of a second there. So Francesca Sewell takes the win ahead of Stephanie Corset. Sophie Sutton coming in third. Fran Bamboost, the super powerful rider, winner of one. She comes in fourth. Nev Bradley, Jenny Pentinen in sixth. Justine Clark in seventh. Amy Nichols in eighth, Peter Mullins in ninth, and the one and only Carly Taylor, my co-commentator this week for Rock Salt Attacker. She is in 10th spot. Good one, Carly. Nice job. And let's see if we have the results from the women. All right, Sarah Grove took out the win there ahead of Grace Fang. V. O'Connell in third, Erin Bertram in fourth, Melinda in fifth, Natasha Williams number 6, seventh was Josie Simpson, number 8 was Sharon Blegg, Jen Buckley was in ninth, and Hannah Vine in 10th. We don't have the results for C and D yet. They are still out on course. Pat, it's pretty tough going, and there were certainly some gaps had opened up in the B grade there. Pretty tight sprint in the front of the A grade there. And interesting, isn't it, that Fran Bambos, who won so convincingly with a lot of power in that first race, just couldn't muscle her way in that second one. I think she will be leading the GC overall. Between her and Francesca Sewell, they've both had 4 very consistent races now. So we've got a real horse race at the top end.
Yeah, and look, the good thing is that they're fighting to the line. Look, I was really, really impressed with that sprint finish there, and particularly, like I said, to see Sophie Sutton, Francesca Sewell, and Steph Corset. That's really a younger end of our women's peloton in Australia. Most of them have just come into the under-21s or still in under-19s. So this is really bright for the future of Australian cycling, and that's something that we're very fond of looking at. We're not sort of looking at the people that are, really established. We're looking at these young up-and-comers that can continue to improve. And but certainly in that top 10, you see Jenny Pentinen in the middle there. She's one of the older riders in the group, but she does well in the National Road Series, and she always has a crack. And then 9th and 10th, 2 of the most experienced riders in Australian cycling, Peter Mullins and also our friend Carly Taylor. It's fantastic to see such a mix of riders in there, and great support for this giant Crit Crushers series already. Nearly 100 riders in A grade in men, and I didn't quite catch how many it was that were on the start line for the women, but a strong turnout again for week 2.
Well, we'll have to see if we can have a chat to Carly Taylor next week about her experience. Of course, she's an incredibly experienced athlete on the road, was a very, very well winning cyclist in her day, especially up in the mountains. I'd be interested to hear what her transition to Zwift racing has been like. So maybe we can talk through that with her next week. So let's take a look at the results from the women's C and D. And some tight racing in all the categories. Okay, for the women's C, Mackenzie Scott took the win. Erin Ferg was in second. Mazza Lovegrove in third. Susie Beretta in fourth. Jennifer Davis took fifth. Tam Kite, the winner of the first race, she took sixth. Emma Gribben in seventh. Leanne Versteeg in eighth. Kat C in ninth. And Michelle McCallum in 10th. Now let's take a look at the men's C.
Yeah, Andrew Bain, he took out the win, 15 minutes 25. That's a quick time. Calvin Ho in second. Jimmy Leach rounded out the podium. Chris Bremer and J-Cat rounded out top 5. Mike Brooks, big shout out to Mike Brooks, always a great helper at the live events in Australia. Jason Dennis in 8th. Jason Pushy in 9th. Miss Dale Lingwood, Dale in 7th. And then Reynold McQueen rounding out the top 10. Well, in D grade, Ryan Luca got the best of the rest. It was Yuchi Ikeda from Japan, Ricardo Asienzo Alvarez in third, Tom Wemborn in fourth, Kaiwaki in fifth, Mark Fenton sixth, Katsuyam in seventh, Asunit Midi in eighth, Owi Feliciano in ninth, and Steve Somerville rounded out the top 10. Well, it's great racing this week, Kate, and well, I'm going to try and do this at the end of each week. My favourite bike this week, unpacking in the shop, was the Fathom 29er 2. Just hit the shops in Australia. So if you're looking for a good hardtail, that's a good one to check out.
Oh, well, you certainly live in bike shop land, don't you, Pat? And everybody's buying bikes in the pandemic. It's fabulous. In our Zwift community, we actually have a lot of women who bought bikes simply to join Zwift and to get on the trainer inside. So I think it's just amazing how many people have certainly taken up the sport. And you're right at the forefront of seeing that.
Yeah, look, it's great to see so many people staying active, and what better way to do it than on Zwift? It's a lot of their rides are non-drop rides, and if you've enjoyed the night tonight, bring a friend along next week for the Giant Crit Crushers. Been fantastic to join you this week, Kate, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday along with everyone else.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Pat, and everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. We've had 2 weeks and 4 fabulous races across the men and the women in this Giant Crit Crusher series, but we're only halfway. We've got 2 weeks to go, so join us same time, same place next week.
Thank you.